Hi, this is Shauna with the Jeffco DeAngelis Foundation, and I'm here today with SRO Collis, who used to be one of our SROs. And Stacy, I wanted you to talk to us about what you used to do, so what the role of the SRO is and the importance in the school and how it really differs from what happens in law enforcement. So would you please tell us about your role and your job history?
Yes, my job history, I was in law enforcement for a total of about 33 years. And the best time that I had, the job that I enjoyed the most was as a school resource officer. I did that from the late 1990s until I retired in 2018. I had the opportunity, I was in the schools doing the DARE program, kind of filling in within the school system. And in the late 90s is when we started to see the request for school resource officers. So I had that opportunity to attend training, which I went through down in Colorado Springs, and became an SRO and started out at Carmody Middle School as their SRO at Carmody, and also worked at Bear Creek K through 8 there in Jefferson County, and did the school resource officer program there as well. In 2001, I had the opportunity to take over as the school resource officer for Green Mountain High School, and I stayed there as their SRO until I retired in November of 2018. So about 18 years as their school resource officer. It was the busiest I'd ever been as a police officer, but it was the most enjoyable. Granted, I did this within the school system for 20 plus years, working with the schools, working with administrators, students, parents, kind of expanding my knowledge and teaching a bunch of different things on internet safety, drug issues, other things within the school system that I could talk about and help keep our kids and our community safe as their school resource officer.
So you bring up a lot of really interesting things there too, in that history of working with our kids. Do you, can you talk a little bit about, because some people think that our SROs are there to be the punishment. So, and I know, in talking to SROs that I know, a lot of them become the confidant. So and a trusted adult in some of our kids' lives. Would you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's, I hate to go back to a phrase that's used often. When I was there, it still is. I teach for the National Association of School Resource Officers, training people to make the transition from patrol into the school systems, working with kids, working with staff, working with parents. But I tell people it's all about the relationships and the relationships that we form. The furthest from my mind was any punishment. Being an enforcer, I was part of the solution and working together. When I made a decision, it always wasn't my first and foremost thing. How can I punish this child? How can I write him a ticket? How can I do this? No. How can I make them make different choices or give them the tools to make different choices? When I can deal with things in advance and talk to them, there were certain circumstances where I had no other choice, but I still had the luxury, the way of dealing with it to make it more, I hate to use the term palatable, but hey, I've got to do this, but we're still going to make this come out in a positive direction. Opening it up to the kids, to the parents, say, hey, you can contact me after this. This is what I have to do. And for me, it was all about those relationships, forming those kind of ties that make it a community effort, so to speak. The community was so important to me. It's disheartening right now to see the communities that are out there that automatically are cutting law enforcement and saying you're not a part of the community. This is what you do. We don't like that. And they have said to me by saying that they don't understand what we do, what the SRO is, what their function is within the school. It's always about that community and building that community. Having neighbors within my community at Green Mountain High School that felt comfortable calling me, hey, we got this problem going on with these kids, or this has gone on in the past. What can we do to resolve this? And it even went further than the kid issues. At Green Mountain, we had a neighbor that consistently had issues. We would get high winds up there, and when they would spread sand and gravel on the staff parking lot at that time, it would blow off and do damage to windows and different things. And so I worked with those community members, say, hey, what can we do? I'm part of the school. I'm part of the police department. What can we do to make things better? To work together. And that has always been a part of me. As I've taught around the country and talked to other SROs, that's a part of them as well, is that building of a relationship, being a part of the community. I look at what the SROs at Bear Creek and Green Mountain, those that took over for myself and a friend of mine, and what they're doing with social media, becoming a part of that, opening things up. And when I first went into the schools, I questioned, will people come and talk to me? Here I am in uniform. Well, kids come and talk to me. And that question was answered very quickly. That door was a swinging door. I mean, they were down there, they were coming, they got this question, and it may not have anything to do with law enforcement, but it was building that relationship of saying, hey, I'm a human being just like everybody else. And I have fears, I have concerns. How can we work at this together? So it is all about those relationships that we build. And first and foremost, punishment is not, was not foremost in my mind, and I don't believe it's foremost in anybody's mind. As far as that punishment, it was a last line of defense if I had to write a ticket or to deal with this, but I also went above and beyond to say, hey, how can we make sure this doesn't happen again? When I was in the schools, I couldn't have told you when I wrote a traffic ticket, far be it from the traffic people. I had other ways of dealing with it and saying, hey, how can I make the impact? Because kids are at that age where they're going to make bad choices. And a ticket, sending them to court, was not always the way to deal with it. It was going to cost the parents. When I was teaching some basic classes, they were talking about, you seem to have two choices. I would walk up to the car if I stopped a kid that had too many passengers in the vehicle after they got their driver's license on a graduated driver's license. And I said, you got two choices. I can write you a ticket. That's a choice that you have. The other choice is, what's your parents' number? And, well, come on, Collis. Why, do I have to give him my parents' number? And I said, those are your two choices. I'll give you a third choice. Which parent do you want me to call? And eventually they'd give me that number. Why would I do that? Because I wanted parent involvement. I knew if I wrote that child a ticket for so many passengers in the vehicle when they just got their driver's license, is that going to really have an impact on the child? No, it's going to raise the insurance rates. It's going to do all sorts of things for that parent. And the child may lose their license, they may not. It's not going to have a long lasting impact, but bringing the parents involved and getting them to understand that, hey, we're all at this together. And if I had a child that did it twice, then we may go a different route because they didn't learn from the first time. And I rarely had a kid that did it a second time. That we had to go a different a different way of dealing with it.
Right.
It is all about how we work together, and that's what the SRO function is all about. A lot of people seem to have that impression that it's somebody standing there with a rifle or with this and standing at the corner, and that we're simply security. And it is so much more. When I first got into this, I had a mentor. He's now passed away, but he was out of Fort Collins Police Department, and he sat down with me and he said, "Stacy," he says, "when you get into this role as a school resource officer, you're going to find out very, very quickly that there is a difference between a police officer in the schools and a school resource officer. When we have a police officer in the schools, that is somebody coming from patrol that has to respond to a call at the school, and they have no idea how to deal with a kid, an administrator, somebody that has no understanding. They have no idea how to deal with that unless they've had some training. But that was the case where most of them did not. Some of the younger generation we're seeing come into law enforcement have had a school resource officer, and they understand what that role is. But a school resource officer is so much more of working through situations and trying to resolve problems so they don't become long-term issues down the road, whether it be traffic, drugs, mental health, all of those type of things. An SRO is involved in and trying to make the situation better.
Well, it's amazing. So the work that you all have done here. And I know, speaking as a parent, it is not easy raising secondary kids, middle schools, high schools, because they're hitting so many of those moving to adult phases. So, and especially kids today, so have grown up in this digital world. So sexting, all the online safety issues, oh my goodness, it just, goes on and piles on. And then you hit your high school years, and, the kids go through the driver's ed training, and then they go through driving themselves to school. So if you're lucky enough, and as parents, you don't know. And as parents, we're not as involved in our kids' education at their secondary school as we were, perhaps in elementary. And because the kids do a lot of the volunteering and things themselves, especially at the high school level. So it's really nice to have those extra partners, and it's nice to have not only the school counselors, but also that school resource officer. I know that, we experienced a pretty massive sexting issue in our middle school years. And, thankfully we have lots of really wonderful programs in Jeffco that have been created because of these issues. And our school resource officers are the ones that came in and helped, because of course, a child taking a picture of themselves as a minor is producing child sexual abuse material. So, so that's another one of those issues. And we, have developed some of those programs with our district attorney's office here. And I'm proud of Jeffco because Jeffco has created that partnership where we do have administrators and law enforcement working together, and certainly our school safety department is really the best of the best at that, because it has to be a collaboration, but the parents have to be a part of it too. So your assistance to tell us, hey, so here's what kiddo was doing today, because we don't necessarily know. So even if we're really active parents, So we need that. We need to know the guidance. And when my kid has done something, help me through that. So, and I don't know what to do.
Mhm.
So,
Well, and the interesting thing with the technology, and we talk about sexting and dealing with that. When I first went into the schools, and I remember the day I was at Carmody Middle School, walked by the computer lab, and had the teacher and others come out, and they're dealing with somebody that just been threatened online, and I'm like, oh, I have no idea. This is not in my bailiwick to deal with this. So I took it upon myself to say, I need to gain more knowledge. I need to gain an understanding of what the kids are having access to. When I was in the schools from 2000 up to 2018 was a plethora of things that went on for the kids of that generation. You had the legalization, both recreational and medicinal, of marijuana in the state of Colorado. You had the increase of vaping that came about in the mid 2000s. You had the technology, the social media cranking at that time. And when we look at those statistics around social media, and those things coming into play, scary thing is, and one of the things that I talk about in other things that I do is the suicide. And we started to see with the social media the increase of females that were suicidal. Again, that social aspect of social media and how that impacted the females. And we started to see a rise of the females contemplating or completing, or not completing, but killing themselves as a result of what they were being exposed to. So there is a ton of stuff that's going on for these kids. And if we look at it as adults, and one of the tacks that I've taken is trying to use a common sense approach when it comes to technology. We cannot go to our parents and say, hey, what did you do when I was on the phone too much? What did you do when I was on the internet? Because they're going to look at you. We didn't have that issue. We can't go to our parents or their parents and say, what did you do to protect me? Because they don't have an idea. But they had certain things that they did that we can still apply to this generation of saying, hey, we need to do a better job as adults in protecting our kids. We cannot shy away from it. And with the sexting, the reason we see the issue is because of the technology. These problems were going on in my generation, your generation, but just in a different format. But now it's all of right in your face with the technology, and hey, I can send a picture and it's anonymous, and put that out there. I was one that was very, and a lot of states did it when the sexting first really took off, and we started to see that when they were having felony charges that were filed or looked at for kids. And a part of me is like, really? We all experienced those issues growing up. They are no different. It's just the technology in their hands, and they haven't been taught how to use it correctly. They're given the newest iPhone, the newest Samsung, whatever it is, and told, hey, run with it. The parents aren't saying, hey, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do. And that is the problem. As adults, we've got to do a better job of saying, hey, let's set some parameters of what the kids can do and have an understanding of what's going on with the technology. I'm not an expert on computers, but I try to stay up on what the current trends are, what's going on, why is Snapchat so intriguing to kids, and how they can do these certain things, what's there for the kids. And it just brings that back to that community of, I'm one person, I've got others in my school when I was there that I could go and ask this question. I had others, I attended training, and this goes to SROs and the fact of the training that we do has to be so well-rounded in gaining an understanding of the technology, gaining an understanding of mental health. When Green Mountain experienced numerous suicides within a relatively short period of time, that's how Second Wind, if you've heard of Second Wind, that's where that came from, was Green Mountain and the number of suicides that we had. So I attended a ton of training, whether it be sources of strength, other things to gain knowledge, and went above and beyond what I had had in a basic class and say, I need advanced training. I need training in mental health. I need training in CIT, whatever it was, how I can advance myself and make me more pertinent to help that community in the area that I worked, and hopefully even expand beyond that and looking at things a little bit differently.
Well, Stacy, thank you so much. This has been wonderful, informative, and we are so incredibly grateful for your service and all of the things that you shared with us today as well. So thank you, and we'll talk to you again soon.